Welcome back to our discussion, Navigate Complex IT Modernization, sponsored by T-Rex Solutions here on Federal News Network. My guests today are Jason Keplinger, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at T-Rex, and Utpal Amin, the Chief Engineer at T-Rex. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And before we get to the bigger picture here on lessons learned, continuing on with what you learned at the Census Bureau, Jason, there's been a shift in the way people think about IT, moving from a network-centric way more to an application-centric view when it comes to cybersecurity, and in many cases, a data-centric view, because ultimately the purpose of systems is to do things with data. And so tell us about that and how that concept applied at Census.
Of course, yeah. Like you said, is data has become the crown jewel of most agencies, and systems process data. That's really where the data is the fuel that everything runs on, basically. Really what we took at Census was a data-centric approach to modernization. And that's important because you need to understand where your data resides, how it's moving throughout the organization, and is there any way to centralize it so that you're reducing cost, also creating a location where you can secure it a lot easier, and not duplicating data throughout your systems as you do that migration. So there's really two parts to that. First is the operational data, is looking at the operational data, understanding, like I said, where it resides, what kind of data you have, creating an MDR, a master data repository, automating a lot of the comparisons between ICDs so that we understand how the data is flowing, what data is flowing, avoiding dropped data as it moves throughout the system, but also taking an approach like Census did, which was putting a data lake or a data hub in place. And that allows you to centralize that data, be able to have applications use that data from different places, and remove the stovepipes that you usually see in a system of systems so that data is available to all systems equally across that. The second piece is really you got to consider as you're moving into a cloud or a CSP environment that there's a lot of security data available and log data available. So you have to scale your back-end systems to handle that data just as much as you have to scale the front-end systems. And you have to performance and scalability test those. That's what we did at Census, is really do the performance and scalability through the whole system, including the back-end systems. So you understand how you have to scale those back-end systems, the logging systems, the accounting systems, all those systems that are on the back end of your enterprise, how you have to scale those also in a data-wise fashion, so that it takes into account that as you move into the cloud, and you can take into account the costs related to that data also.
Yes, because sometimes that back-end data in terms of volume greatly exceeds your operational data.
Absolutely, especially if you're getting data from every host, from the network. Like I said, CSPs give you great definition in the amount of data that they give from net flows, from your host-based network taps. You're getting a lot of data there that you may not get in a normal on-prem environment, but you have to take that into account as you do your migration.
And Utpal, let's back up for a moment. You were embedded in Census, and you had teams working with their various teams. Behind all of this technological updating and modernization, and it was complex, there's been a human factor and an organizational cultural factor such that people were receptive to taking on this really big task. Despite the fact that they led a contract and had to do it, you still have to have their hearts and minds, I guess, along there too.
Absolutely. So one of the challenges we had is to make sure that all of the system are willing and wanted to adapt to this whole cloud and moving towards to the cloud. So we had embedded account managers into each of the systems team, and they helped them navigate to the different parts. Let me give you an example. So one of the things as part of our program, we were doing performance and scalability testing. So during that particular test, the account managers would help the performance and scalability testing team to be able to load the system and test particular scenarios. But whenever there were problems, they would then interact with the systems teams, making sure everybody understands what the goal is that we're trying to reach, and making sure the systems are being able to perform to that level, and to bring the systems team to kind of acknowledge that we need to make changes so that we are able to handle the loads that are needed for the proper decennial census to occur.
In the time we have left, let's talk about some of the lessons learned from census that might help other agencies and go through complex modernization, but really the goal there is mission delivery. You want to maybe take some of the complexity out, I guess, along the way and to get to this modern state. So lessons learned. Jason?
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons learned that we had was the flexibility, especially in the times that we're talking about right now with COVID-19 ongoing, and the operations, especially in the census, had to move and adjust associated with the current environment. And that's where a cloud approach really was helpful. I mean, we were able to scale down the systems and scale them back up as needed. Some of the operations compressed. So we were able to take our models associated with how those system workloads look like, and we're able to scale those models up in a shorter period of time, and then create environments in the cloud that we could test them in at load, at peak, so that we could test those new peaks very quickly and then deploy them back out into the operational environment. So it was allowing us to be a lot more flexible as the operations moved and being able to adjust and move with those operations. It also helped us with going fully remote as we got into this situation. Also, we have a fully remote workforce, and we're able to transition into that fully remote workforce very quickly. And we're able to still maintain a very successful internet response with the Census Bureau. And that's to the success of the Census Bureau and being able to move to a fully remote situation and still have that kind of success.
I think one of the keys there is to leave yourself time in for that thorough testing and pressure testing, not just functional testing, but testing under load at scale, so that you know that when the parade comes by, you are ready to march in there, huh?
No, that's very important. And on the census program, T-REX takes a very holistic approach to performance and scalability testing, starting at the architecture, looking at the architecture, understanding how a system scales. And that's very important to determining where you put that application, determining what landing zone, what cloud you want to put that application into, how does it scale, and does it need to scale? We also modeled out the workloads associated with each of those systems so that we could then test them later on associated with those workloads. So we knew where we needed to test them to, what the peaks were, where we needed to stress them to. And then finally, delivering them into production and doing some production level testing was our final step in that process.
All right, some great takeaways. I want to thank today's guest, Jason Keplinger, is Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at T-REX Solutions, Utpal Amin, the Chief Engineer at T-REX. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, go to federalnewsnetwork.com and search T-REX.